10 years ago, Senator Elizabeth Warren changed the world. 10 years ago, no one in power saw concentrated control as a problem. No one saw tech platforms as a threat to liberty of speech and inquiry, liberty of commerce and movement. No one certainly had any concrete idea about how to fight any of these pressing threats. And then on June 29th, 2016, a single speech by Senator Warren established a whole new frame for understanding the threats, a whole new language for understanding power here in Washington, in America, all across and all around the world. Sadly, many true believers in liberal democracy, including some of our friends and allies, have yet to learn this language for understanding and mastering power. Sadly, many true, honest believers in liberal democracy still, some of them, fear to use this language for understanding and mastering power, even if they understand why they should be learning it. And I say sadly because when we, the true defenders of liberal democracy, fail to speak this language to achieve good, other people will use this language for ill. In 2010, defenders of democracy failed to embrace this language and we got the Tea Party. In 2016, defenders of democracy failed to fully embrace this language about power and we got Trump plus Bannon. In 2024, defenders of democracy failed to embrace this language and this analysis and we got Trump again, plus Musk. As we all know, these people take this language and they twist it into something very different and dangerous, designed not to enlighten, but to confuse and mislead, not to deliver freedom, but to deliver us to new forms of control. 10 years ago, in introducing Senator Warren for that speech that changed the world, I described Senator Warren as the Brandeis of our age. You know, I'd say that was perhaps an understatement. It was, Senator Warren is one of the few most important founders and refounders of our democracy. And so, on this 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, let's hear from Senator Warren how we shall win this next American Revolution and build a far better democracy than we've ever had in the past.
Generous introduction. Thank you, Barry. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. You know, I just want to say to all of you, we all owe Barry a huge debt of gratitude for helping us along the way to the next revolution. And thank you, Barry. Thank you. So the first time I spoke at Open Markets was 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I warned that competition in America was dying. Today, meaningful competition barely registers a heartbeat. 5 defense companies dominate military contracting. 4 beef packers control up to 85% of all beef sales. 3 chains sell half of all prescription drugs in the United States. 2 companies control almost half of all U.S. e-commerce. All across our economy, a handful of giants dominate entire industries. So that's the reality. Let's talk for just a minute about winners and losers. The winners, they're enjoying their day in the sun. Corporate profits are at an all-time high. CEOs are richer than ever. In 1965, CEOs were paid on average 21 times as much as the typical worker. Today, that number has spiked to 281 times. And before a Fortune 500 CEO grabs the mic here, you can see them racing in to talk about how super duper the stock market has been to build wealth. Note that it is the richest 10% of American households that own almost 90% of that stock market wealth. It's pretty clear who is dancing on the corpse of American competition: the richest Americans who just keep getting richer. So let's talk for a minute about the losers, the other 90% of Americans. As competition dies, they pay more. They pay when a corporate giant hikes the cost of health insurance. They pay when they purchase airline tickets from one of only 4 major airlines, and then they pay extra to bring a bag or to sit next to a family member. They pay when they buy groceries from Kroger's or Fred Meyer or Ralph's or Food for Less or Mariano's or Smith's or Harris Tweeter. That sounds like competition, right? Except that every one of those is owned by Kroger. When choices are limited to a handful of giant companies, customers are forced to shell out whatever they charge, and giants just keep raising the prices. Just plain old Econ 101. But there is another darker layer to what happens when giants dominate an industry. With a handful of CEOs in charge, a handful of people dictate what you watch on TV, which doctor you're allowed to see, what you eat, what predators get access to your children online, what apartment you can rent. And as AI sweeps in, they may be the ones who determine what your future job looks like. Today, a majority of Americans think that, quote, when it comes to politics and society, nothing really matters because powerful people will always do whatever they want. No wonder much of America believes that Jeffrey Epstein and J.P. Morgan Chase get to play by one set of the rules while everyone else faces the hard accountability if they or their kids break the law. Now, this shift did not occur overnight. It is the result of decades of both political parties' failure to enforce our country's antitrust laws. It's politicians and presidents of both parties favoring corporations over workers, and of both parties confirming judges who skew legal interpretation to benefit corporate giants. This shift is also what happens when America's toothless campaign finance laws allow corporations and billionaires to funnel endless amounts of money into elections and into lobbying so that the giants can buy government favors. So yeah, the past 10 years since I was here last time with you, the past 10 years have been tough. But the past few years have also brought hope and a counterattack against monopolies. When Joe Biden was elected, we fought for and got the most pro-competition DOJ and FTC in decades. I'm obviously here talking about antitrust enforcers Lena Khan and Jonathan Counter. You can all just do a round of applause even though they're not here. And lots of people talk about the great things about him, but the thing I like to note about these two is first, they launched big cases. Not the nibble around the edge, hold back, the thing I'll be sure to win. They launched big cases and they lost. And you know what they did? They got up and they launched some more big cases, and then they started to win. DOJ in 2024 won its first anti-monopolization case in decades, and for the first time ever, successfully blocked a merger based on negative effects on workers. It's amazing. And with Khan at the helm, the FTC blocked a merger between Kroger and Albertsons, which would have raised grocery prices for millions of Americans. And you know, if you don't already see the connection between enforcement of antitrust laws, competition, and keeping prices down, don't take it from me. Take it from the CEO of Albertsons. She got up after the merger was blocked and said, well, the company is planning to keep prices low to attract more shoppers and compete with its rivals. Darn. You know, and if Kahn and Cantor had kept going, we would have seen even more wins. Those two were making the billionaire class really nervous. They were making the Wall Street deal makers very uncomfortable. So it is no wonder that giant corporations donated to Trump's 2024 campaign in astonishing numbers. And as soon as Trump took office, the corporations came knocking at the White House door to get their pro-monopoly deals approved. You know, have you wondered why companies keep donating millions of dollars to Trump's gold-encrusted ballroom, to his arch, to his library? Do you think these are really ballroom fans, library fans, arch fans? No. Come on, we're not stupid. It looks like a pay-to-play scheme. Like any two-bit pay-to-play scheme, only playing it out right there in public. Take the Paramount Skydance deal. Skydance desperately wanted to take over Paramount, and it was up to the Trump administration to stop it. So, what did the executives do? Step one, Paramount CBS settled a really stupid lawsuit with Trump, handing him over $16 million. Step two, when Stephen Colbert called that a big fat bribe, CBS canceled his show. And step three, the Trump administration approved the merger. The result? Now Trump's buddy, David Ellison, the owner of Skydance, now also owns Paramount, which means he owns Paramount Pictures, CBS, Nickelodeon, BET, Comedy Central, MTV, and a massive movie and television library with everything from Top Gun to SpongeBob SquarePants. And Ellison has more plans. He wants to buy up Warner Brothers too, so that he can add to his flock here CNN's, HBO, the Food Network, another film studio, Discovery Channel, Cartoon Network, TNT, TBS, and more. One guy in charge of all of that. Everyone from TV watchers to production assistants to makeup artists to A-list celebrities have called to block this merger. And Donald Trump's DOJ has ignored them all and just rubber-stamped the deal. A few days later, of course, David Ellison showed up to celebrate at Trump's cage match birthday party. But make no mistake, this one is not over. The state AGs have the power to block this merger, and that is exactly what they should do. You bet. Now look, that doesn't mean we should let our guard down, because these guys aren't giving us a break. In fact, now Fox is trying to buy Roku to create another media behemoth, combining the two largest free ad-supported streaming services into one. And remember, Fox is owned by the Murdochs, another, shall we say, Trump-friendly family. We're seeing consolidation of media by a few oligarchs happen right before our eyes. And that's just one industry. Bear with me and let's do just one more. The Trump administration rubber-stamped a merger between the two largest residential real estate brokerages in the United States, Anywhere Real Estate and Compass, even though it means one company will now control 70% of real estate listings in some areas, and that in turn could drive housing prices even higher. So how on earth did this happen? Two clues. One, Compass hired a Trump-friendly lobbyist. And two, Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal lawyer and wannabe attorney general, reportedly ran an end run around the experts at DOJ. Now, I'm not the only one who noticed it looks like corruption is greasing the skids for mega deals. Giant companies are now spending more money on lobbying than ever before. These companies understand that the antitrust laws as written could stop consolidation in its tracks, and they seem quite willing to spend millions and millions of dollars to persuade enforcers just to ignore the law. Okay, that sounds pretty grim. It looks like we are careening toward oligarchy, but you will notice I am still smiling. And I am still smiling because the antitrust cat is out of the bag. What Lena Khan and Jonathan Cantor did, which Wall Street Journal types, by the way, said couldn't be done, has changed things in a way that Trump and corporate CEOs cannot undo. Khan and Cantor reminded America about the tools created by our antitrust laws and demonstrated how to use those tools. And today, people in and out of government are picking those tools up, and the giants cannot stop them. And that is why, 10 years after my first speech here, even as corporate giants do everything they can to eliminate competition, even as their profit model is basically to end competition and then raise profits, even as the Trump administration seems willing to sell get-out-of-jail-free cards to the highest bidders, I have hope. More people in Congress are starting to see the impact of consolidation. Republican Senator Tim Sheehy and I are advancing the right to repair for the military bill, and we have it in both the House and the Senate defense bills right this minute. They have already passed both houses. Republican Senator Josh Hawley and I have teamed up on a bill to break up big medicine to drive down health care prices. Not law yet, but we're sure getting a lot more interest. State attorneys general are making big changes. They're pushing to break up the Live Nation Ticketmaster deal. They sued to halt the $6 billion merger between Nexstar and Tenga, and they may be getting ready to challenge Paramount's takeover of Warner Brothers. Pretty big deal. State legislators are writing new laws to tackle consolidation. Working people and small businesses are beginning to band together to sue the companies that are hurting competition and, I love this part, spreading the word about Robinson Patman. I now have people say things to me like, I really believe in Robinson Patman, and I say, you are such a nerd, but you are my kind of nerd. The world is changing, and I don't care how many lobbyists the would-be monopolists hire. I don't care how many campaign contributions they make. They cannot put this genie back in the bottle. Now, could we do more? Sure we could. Must we do more? Absolutely. For example, Congress should sharpen the antitrust enforcers' tools. We should mandate structural separation to prevent conflicts of interest in vertically integrated companies. We should close merger review loopholes that speed up consolidation in the housing market. We should ban private equity roll-up strategies. Can I just have an amen, particularly on that one? Jeez. We should introduce reforms to crack down on antitrust corruption, like public notices of HSR deadlines, beef up Tunney Act settlement review, and streamline processes to unwind illegal mergers. And we should confirm judges who will actually enforce the antitrust laws on the books. You know, I could stop there, but let me just pause for a minute on the point about judges. We need strong people at DOJ and FTC. But if judges ignore the law, then Americans aren't going to see the benefits of antitrust law. And I'm not just talking about Republican-appointed judges. A Clinton judge allowed T-Mobile to merge with Sprint, shrinking the cell phone market from 4 major competitors down to 3. An Obama judge dismissed a lawsuit alleging Facebook illegally acquired competitors, reduced protections and services for consumers. And a Biden judge cleared the way for Microsoft to take over Activision, which, by the way, led to Microsoft firing almost 2,000 Activision workers after claiming that is exactly what they would not do. Over and over again, judges have succumbed to the siren song of pro-corporate Chicago school economics and ignored the actual antitrust laws that are on the books. We should build a diverse federal bench that will uphold the letter of the law and not be wowed by a small army of $2,000 an hour lawyers whose main job is to make sure that nothing upsets the plans of the world's biggest corporations and richest executives. It is time to change the temperature of the water. We need to rebalance the bench with consumer protection lawyers, with tenants' rights lawyers, and with labor side labor lawyers. Yes. And we need to be ready to use the tools of antitrust enforcement even more decisively to meet new challenges. Consider artificial intelligence. Corporations don't get a free pass from antitrust laws just because they're using an algorithm. If a company is using AI to illegally inflate rent prices in the middle of a national housing affordability crisis, we need to push back. We need to remind big tech that vertical integration can be a violation of antitrust law when it's used to lock out competition. And yeah, big tech will try to wave off antitrust enforcement by arguing that beating China on AI is important for our national security. But we know that competition is essential for innovation, and antitrust is essential to promote and protect that competition. When I look around the country, I see more appetite than ever to take on the corporate monopolies that rip off American consumers. And I'm not the only one. John Ossoff has called for cracking down on giant corporations that are buying up single-family housing. So have Juliana Stratton from Illinois and Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota. But it doesn't stop there. Chris Pappas in New Hampshire is running on an agenda, quote, to stop corporate greed. Go get them. And Graham Plattner calls out corporations, how they have consolidated power, not by competing better, but by cheating. Mary Patola in Alaska aggressively supported the FTC in its suits against the Kroger-Albertson merger. And she took credit, stood up and took credit publicly when that merger was blocked. And in North Carolina, Roy Cooper's highlighting his record of fighting unfair business practices that let shady corporations make millions by ripping you off. And I'm just pointing out a little over a half a dozen candidates for the Senate alone. Look around. The nickels are starting to drop all around the country. And people are beginning to understand that they're sick of being cheated, of being ripped off, and they want someone, whether it's in Washington or the State House or the mayor's office, who will not just be there to deliver for a handful of billionaires. They want someone who will deliver for them. So here I am, 10 years later, and I don't kid myself. Yeah, it is tough out there. Dominant corporations at this moment are in a merger frenzy, and the Trump administration is corrupt. Hell, the Trump administration is beyond corrupt. The giants will not give up power easily. But here's the deal. The fight is now on, and we are not giving up either. And with all of us in this fight, I like our odds. So I just want to say, on the 10th anniversary of having come here before, thank you all for being part of this fight. Thank you for being part of the next revolution. Thank you. Thank you, Barry.